I plan on focusing my dissertation on access to healthcare in an urban environment. Fortunately, but unfortunately, we're the only level one trauma center in Atlanta proper. So, everything comes to us. But, with that, we're also going through a time or a season of growth. We've also been able to open up additional clinics through the health system. It's always conversation on how we can do better. How can we be better? How can we be innovative? How can we meet the patient where they're at? Patients will always remain first. We will meet our patients where they're at, do the best that we can to assist and aid them through, whichever situation they might be facing.
Hey, everyone, and welcome to Smarter Sourcing Healthcare, the podcast where we talk to healthcare supply chain leaders about the issues that they're facing today. And thank you to our audience for being so great with feedback on what we've been discussing with the leaders so far. And we've got a real treat for you today. We're joined by Kevin Gordon, and Kevin is the System Supply Chain Operations Leader for Grady Health System in Atlanta, Georgia. Welcome, Kevin.
Thank you, Eric. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no, it's, we're going to cover a lot of ground today. But before we get started, I thought maybe a personal question, because you're soon to become Dr. Kevin Gordon, or you're on that track. I wondered if you'd just share with our audience, what drove you to do that, and maybe just some details around what you're doing on that front.
So with that, I'm a second-year doctoral student at Medical University of South Carolina, working towards a doctorate in healthcare administration. Honestly, I didn't foresee myself going back to school. However, the opportunity presented itself and really wanted to become more well-rounded within healthcare. A lot of my educational background is in business and supply chain operations, and there's nothing really specific that I had within healthcare. Again, opportunity presented itself and it aligned, with just future career aspirations and also, getting a little bit more in depth into the healthcare space.
Yeah, that's amazing. Do you have a specific area of focus within what you're doing there?
So with the research, I plan on focusing my dissertation on access to healthcare in an urban environment. Working at Grady Health System in Atlanta, Georgia, I see it every day. Not only pockets or areas of a healthcare desert, but also food deserts, and things of that nature. So I really been diving into the research to hopefully make an impact or a difference, here in the great Atlanta community.
That's really great. And maybe just give us some background, because you didn't start your career in healthcare. You were at Cargill and PepsiCo. How did you get into healthcare? And then, you've had places where in your career where you kind of stepped out of healthcare and then now are back again. What give us a little bit of piece of that journey and kind of why you're back dedicating your talents to the healthcare supply chain.
So yeah, coming out of undergrad, I really didn't know which direction I wanted to go in. I knew I wanted to be in business, just didn't know what sector. And with that, had an opportunity to interview with Cargill. I'll never forget. Rashad Hart was my interviewer and also my ended up being my leader. But he asked me, what do you know about agriculture? And I told him I'm originally from Detroit, Michigan, so I know more about a V8 than I do farming. And then he said, just tell me what you got. And I said, well, sunlight, good soil and water. He said, you got the basics. I'll teach you the rest. And that's how I got into supply chain and logistics. Had an opportunity to work with PepsiCo within distribution in Southern Louisiana. I had an opportunity with United Natural Foods on their strategy team. So really taking my supply chain background to solve problems. And at that time, United Natural Foods was acquiring other smaller businesses, which we needed to integrate. So it was on the strategy team and problem solving. That was right up my alley as well. And then I also had an opportunity, as you mentioned, outside of healthcare, also with Lowe's corporate office. I had an opportunity to manage their supply chain real estate, which was fun. I have I guess you could say a slight background in real estate, as I guess it's a pet project or pet hobby. So that did come into handy. But ultimately, I transitioned into healthcare once I completed or as I was completing my MBA and had an opportunity to interview for a supply chain fellowship at Oshner Health System. First time in my life, I came in second, and at the end of the day, was not necessarily upset because it led to a full time leadership role within the organization. So I'll say this the first time I did not mind coming in second place.
And so when you then, you left Oxner and went back to Lowe's, what brought you back to healthcare? Is there something within that world for you that you said, "Oh, outer retail and back here, right? Retail supply chain sometimes thought of as more advanced than healthcare. What brought you back?
Honestly, I would say it's the patient care side. I realized, and it was one of those aha moments. I'm at Lowe's having the sense of urgency of trying to get, refrigerators, stoves, washers, and dryers to customers. And, one of my colleagues were like, if it doesn't get there tomorrow, they're not going to die. And that was the moment the light bulb went off and said, well, regardless, you should still have, the sense of urgency of taking care of the customer in this case versus, the patient. But that was that aha moment for me where I definitely was working after I relocated to Charlotte, was trying to figure out how to get back into healthcare. Because I realized that I was still patient centered, patient focused, and I guess the mission, if you want to call it, was taking care of the patient. And I was the only one in the room that had a sense of urgency trying to do something. So I was like, yeah, this may not be for me. Although it was a great experience, great opportunity. I had awesome leadership there, but just again, the emphasis on customer versus patient was very different, and I definitely wanted to get back to the healthcare environment.
Yeah, and that's common across a lot of our guests. Just that calling piece, that service piece, and commendable. And to be doing it as well at Grady, it's a unique place. We're going to talk a little bit more about safety net hospitals, but what do you see? Maybe just share a little background for our audience about what's happening at Grady Health System, and maybe how it's different than an Ochsner or an HCA or a mainline health system, or maybe you don't see it as different. I'm interested in, you've been on both sides of that, and interested in your perspective.
Well, I'll say at the end of the day, all the organizations you named belong with Grady. First and foremost, is about patient care and taking care of the patient. So there's definitely no difference there. What I will say is how we go about taking care of the patient is slightly different. Also at Grady, it's an academic institution and a safety net and not for profit. So definitely different than the for profit model with HCA. But I mean, aside from that, that's really where the difference lies. At the end of the day, we have exceptional clinicians taking care of patients. Fortunately, but unfortunately, we're the only level one trauma center in Atlanta proper or city of Atlanta proper. So if you compare the size of numbers of residents within the city of Atlanta to other major cities, they have two, three, maybe four level one trauma centers. So I would say for us, the difference is that we see everything. We see the worst of the worst, and we're the only level one trauma center. So everything comes to us. Aside from trauma, we also have our stellar burn program and the stellar stroke program as well. So with that, that's we are here for Atlanta. One of the marketing campaigns is that can live without grading. And that's a fact. But with that, we're also going through a time or a season of growth. We have a Grady South campus that it's underway. There's our freestanding emergency room is scheduled to open here beginning of June. Then there's plans that have been announced for a medical office building and then a 200 bed hospital to then form our Grady South campus. And literally right in between our main campus and our future Grady South campus, we have a consolidated service center that's expected to open any day here, waiting for the certificate of occupancy so I can get pallets on the in the rack or in the racking and shelves, and then also get our pharmacy team up and running as well. So we've also been able to open up additional clinics through the health system. We have expansion going on at our Crestview, which is our long-term care and nursing home facility. So additional tower there, but it's a great time to be in Grady.
Yeah, no, so many things that you brought up that I want to dig into. I'm not even quite sure where to start. But maybe a start on the new construction side, right? Because that's really exciting, from a mission standpoint and a coverage standpoint for the population there. But are you involved in supply chain in the new construction side? Or maybe to what extent are you involved and how is that going?
So with that, we are involved somewhat, at least from the standpoint of ensuring that we have an equipment, supplies, everything of that nature there. But that project is off and running. Like I mentioned, the freestanding ED will be up and running here beginning of next month. So we got a couple weeks. Just completed a ribbon cutting earlier this week. But aside from that, after that's open, it's on to the next building, which is the medical office building. And then, the big hurrah of an additional hospital, which additional 200 beds. I feel that everybody in the health system can't wait to be able to have access to and open up so we can take care of patients in that area as well.
Yeah, no, it's great. That'll be an exciting ribbon cutting for everybody. So, and you talked a little bit about the clinical model being a little bit unique, so it's Morehouse and Emory residents. From a clinically aligned supply chain standpoint, does that create any unique challenges at Grady that other health systems don't have to as great a degree?
Well, I know it's a little different for me. So, we have Morehouse School of Medicine physicians or doctors, and we also have the Emory School of Medicine. And then you have a third tier that is physician leadership that may not have went to a university or medical school for their training. So, there's three respective faults or three ways of potentially solving a problem or how to solve it. So I'll say there's definitely been a unique dynamic once I joined Grady, once I understood that dynamic compared to other health systems that I've been with. And I say that because it's a teaching institution, there's three different ways or three different schools of thought. And then just trying to make sure that we are accommodating, our dots to make sure that they have what they need can sometimes be a little challenging to get everybody standardized the same way. But ultimately, everybody comes to the table as a good partner, and we're able to solve those problems or have those difficult conversations, and ultimately align with the best option. Again, that's best for the patient, and not necessarily because it's a Grady way, Emory way, or Morehouse way.
That sounds complicated, and, I mean, it's complicated in the easiest, environments, and that one where you've got 3 constituents and, you're kinda having to serve all of them, and, I'm guessing there's some compromising there. It may be, whatever you wanna call it, a learning environment for everybody as you do that. And you talked about some of the supply chain transformation. You've been there 4 years now. I've watched at point blank range you doing some just really good things, and making progress there. You talked about the CSC. I think you did a ERP implementation. What's been that transformative journey? How did you get it done? How did you get support within the health system to get the resources to do what you need to do?
So essentially, I looked at it. I did my assessment as I joined the organization, and really focuses on our four main pillars within supply chain, which is people, processes, finances, and technology. And with that, really going through all four of those buckets, I would say between the finance and the technology, kind of going back and forth. It's really not a third or fourth, place of ranking. But with that, essentially started with the people assessment, making sure we had the right people in the right places, doing the right things. And then that moved over to processes. So we had to make sure we had the documented processes for these people to do those right things. And then from there, that's what I was saying that technology and finance kind of go back and forth because I felt like from a process standpoint, we had inefficiencies in the process with our previous system. And then as we transitioned to going from PeopleSoft to Workday, we gained a lot of efficiencies, which then also has a financial impact. With that, for like our contracts team, we've been able to use Workday as a holistic system. And then with our contracts, we're able to upload contracts. We're able to, the downstream effect with loading those contracts, then loads the pricing, which then goes over to the requisition side of the house, which then goes to PO, which then allows us to go through accounts payable. So, a more efficient process. We were able to implement Workday. We're still in the stabilization period. However, when we turned the switch off from the old system and turned on the new system, it did come on. So there was a sigh of relief, I would say, throughout the health system. But with that, we're also implementing Texas as our warehouse management system or WMS within our consolidated service center, which will then tie into Workday. Ultimately, leaving Workday still the voice of truth for all of our supply chain functions. Aside from that, we're able to upgrade handhelds and things of that nature, as well as for the receiving process, and look forward to being able to go live with Texas just like we did with Workday and had that sigh of relief.
Yeah, but all these things cost money, right? I mean, they're expensive. Grady's been around a long time. They hadn't done these kind of things like build a warehouse and automate some of these processes. How did you get the funding and the financing to do that? Was that a lot of work, or was there somebody who just magically know the value of supply chain within Grady and said, "Hey, Kevin, go do it"? How did this come about?
Well, I would say first, we as supply chain rebuilt the trust from our peers, colleagues, our leadership. I would say with rebuilding that trust, now we became credible. So I've said it before in our conversations, just our X's and O's, that basic blocking and tackling. We're able to do the small things right and do it consistently. Now people are going to notice. And as we're doing those things consistently and now are taking on other challenges within the health system, now people are going to hear you. And with that, along with my team of directors, we were able to make the case as to why we needed a consolidated service center. As I mentioned earlier, too, there's a lot of growth going on in the health system. And many times within the health systems, your support services are in the basement. Unfortunately, we're not able to expand the basement as everything above ground is expanding. Space is definitely getting tight, and with that, that was one of the key opportunities. It was one, let's just do some rounding in these areas, and at the same time, as we were trying to find more space, myself and one of my directors and the vice president of pharmacy happened to bump into each other, and he was looking for space as well. So my director Trevor was like, "Aha, I think I have some space for you." And that's when we were able to collaborate and come together with our pro forma. The initial pass on the pro forma supply chain was not making any money. It's a common thing with supply chain. We burn and churn through money, a lot of money before we make money. In this situation, presented the initial idea to our leadership, and to our CFO at the time was Anthony Stahl, and he's like, this is not making any sense. You want all of this space. It's going to cost X amount of dollars a month or per year, but you're not generating any money. So again, going back to our pharmacy team members, they needed the space, and they're definitely generating money. So with this partnership or collaboration and this additional space, they would, financially do additional 5 to 7 million more dollars projected by having the space, by having some updated equipment. And within this process, we were also divesting or moving out of other real estate and not renewing those leases or terminating those leases early. Therefore, truly consolidating efforts and different services into one building.
Yeah, and Anthony Saul, I mean, he's now the CEO, right?
He's was here recently promoted to president and COO, and will be or is the incoming president and CEO effective January 1st, 2027.
Yeah. And whatever you've done with him, he's been an advocate, and seems to have supply chain on the path, right? As he talks about modernizing the safety net, eliminating the healthcare deserts, the food deserts, thinking about, how you use maybe supply chain as a way to reach out to patients. And we see it in super rural environments, and we also see the huge opportunity for supply chain in urban environments. Do you see that on your roadmap? I know there's been a lot of outreach into the community, using some, I'll call them mobile care delivery units and that kind of thing, that have to be enabled by supply chain. But how are you seeing that evolve as you think about modernizing the safety net?
So, I mean, with that, we're looking at and having discussions around several options that are very innovative to be able to reach the patient, potentially reach the patient at home, and or just meeting the patient where they are. But again, it's about from a supply chain standpoint, ensuring the clinicians and our colleagues have what they need at their fingertips, and they, key point, they don't run out of stock, or nor do they have to worry about, when is my next order coming. They're just doing their thing as they do day in and day out, and allow us as a supply chain team to take care of those worries or concerns. But yes, I mean, it's always conversation on how we can do better. How can we be better? How can we be innovative? How can we meet the patient where they're at? And that looks different for everyone. Again, you mentioned rural versus urban. So yeah, it really just it's a lot. A lot of innovative conversations and just trying to figure out again how we can play our part, our small part in the big picture. One, to be able to pull it off as a health system, but two, to be able to take care of the patients, however we can.
Yeah, maybe we talk about that because, like, small part, we get it. Clinicians have to provide care, but ultimately supply chains, 30-40% of the overall budget, and a lot of that, if you look at everything, I guess I'm just kind of interested in what kind of cost pressures that you have today. Are they changing from a cost savings or a profitability standpoint? Is it causing you to think about governance over areas like capital, new construction, pharmacy, indirect spend, purchase services in a different way than you've historically done? Any changes on that front or different financial pressures on Grady?
I would say, every from a financial pressure standpoint, I think healthcare as an industry just has a slight financial pressure as, different reimbursements or the rules, regulations around Medicaid, Medicare reimbursements have changed. But with that, we still at the end of the day need to provide patient care. So it's really navigating through the challenges and not sidestepping or, taking a back seat to it, but meeting it head on. I'll say with that, as a health system, we're trying to do our best to be financial stewards. When it comes to as you mentioned, like purchase services, even with our value analysis team, when we're looking and reviewing various products, it's not always about cost. It is about outcomes with patients. It is about the quality of the product. But the cost piece is also taken into account. Anybody in supply chain, whether you're in healthcare or not, having to deal with tariffs and not knowing exactly, how much the tariff is going to be, chasing your tail, trying to hit a moving target that when you're just about to hit it moves again, it's definitely been challenging, but again, having to face the challenge and press through it and fight through it. So with that, we at Grady have definitely been working with our GPO or General Purchasing Organization, Visiant. Just to do an assessment through the health system, whether it's PPI, whether it's purchase services, looking through pharmacy, looking through capital construction to find opportunities for savings. I will say a lot of our vendors that we partner with at Grady are definitely partners and understand that one, we have growth, and then also understand two, with our growth, is there opportunity to look at savings from a volume standpoint. I wouldn't say necessarily a volume discount, but looking at the overall growth and volume to see if there's opportunities for the savings. And from there, or other situations, we have to go through a procurement process, do our RFPs, see what the street has to say about that, that service, that product, from a pricing standpoint, and then ultimately make the best decision for the organization and our patients. So, again, that's your basic supply chain and going back to the X's and O's.
Yeah, and you mentioned Visiant, and maybe share with us a little bit. My perception is you are a national leader, if not at least a national leader with Visiant, and saying there should be a safety net collaborative, within the membership. How did that come about, and how has that been going with kind of safety net peers across the country, and differences, unique scenarios that they may have, that having it one voice in one group could be helpful toward?
That's definitely a great question. That's something that's actually underway as we're working with our Visiant partners. Something I expressed to them maybe about year and a half, 2 years ago, is that when you look at the different aggregates, and you look at your larger health systems, so may or may not be a part of Visiant, but your Intermountain, your Cleveland, your Mayo clinics, even your Ashers of the world, some of your larger health systems, we all are tasked and do a good job of taking care of patients. I'll say the difference is how we go about it and how we go about taking care of our patients. And that is not necessarily a true cookie cutter approach. So, with that, I one of our meetings, I was like, well, hey, is there an opportunity to create an aggregate just for safety nets or academic institutions or something of the combination? Because it's slightly different. I mean, when you look at, like again, Mayo or Cleveland, it's just health systems that, face value are different in the makeup. So that was something that Busy and definitely entertained. They heard us. And with that, at our summit last year, the Visiant Summit, there was the first time of actually having if you want to call it, a convening of safety net. So had the opportunity to meet peers across the country that are dealing with the same thing we're dealing with from a safety net urban environment standpoint. structure of, if it's county ran or not was a little different for some, but ultimately, it was like, oh, you having that problem too, or oh, you're dealing with this, which is a different constraint or problem than it would be for, and again, referencing Mayo and Cleveland. Again, nothing wrong with those health systems. We just take care of the patient slightly different. So, with that, looking forward to our summit again this year with Visiant, as I think it's going to continue to grow. I mean, the conversations have been very, very intentional, meaningful, and thoughtful. But there's also been collaboration across the table. I mean, it's a very unique experience when you have a lot of your major safety nets from around the country that are also Visiant members able to sit down, break bread, and then start, having those conversations or bouncing ideas off of one another. Or, when it even gets to the innovation, what are some of the things that you're doing? Because we did a recent tour here of our health system in our consolidated service center, and we're showing all the plans for Grady South with some of our partners at Visiant. And I remember telling them, we're not your average or your run of the mill safety net. With Grady, we are doing some great things. We are innovative in doing all of this, taking care of the patient.
And you're really kind of 101, right? You're part academic, you're part safety net. You're the only the standalone level one trauma center. Those are some unique characteristics of Grady that present some challenges and also some responsibilities to the community that you serve. So, just such great leadership, and I love seeing the kind of the national role that you're playing on that front. Shift gears a little bit, and we talked earlier. You talked about people, and process and technology as you built this out. But how have you gone about it? Right, you're a great leader. How have you gone about attracting the right talent to support Grady's mission in supply chain? Has that had unique challenges, or does it feel about the same as it would at a uh, Oxner or other type health system like that?
I would say definitely it was a challenge, having to be able to relay the vision, because I would say my vision and what we're doing at Grady has been slightly different than what I've done at other health systems. And with a lot of change, with a lot of growth, even with the change management piece, that is something that has really been an opportunity where I've been able to recruit and retain talent that way. I'll say with my group of directors, they bought in early. With my one director, Randy, I say he inherited me. He's our most senior or tenured leader of supply chain at 10 years. Just had an anniversary last week. And then Randy Lester's director of value analysis, and then Trevor Williams is director of supply chain operations. He's right at 2.5 years in the role. And then Tamika Goddard as our director of strategic sourcing, procurement, and supply chain strategy and performance. So she's right there with Trevor, about 2.5 years in, and really just had to provide the vision. Like, what is, their number one question was like, well, where do you see Grady? Where do you see supply chain in that 3 to 5 year timeline? And, I talked about the consolidated service center. I talked about an ERP upgrade. I talked about being best in class. At the same time, I talked about some of the issues that we were having from a process standpoint, also having to evaluate talent. And oh, by the way, you two can lead this and help solve and manage the change, with their respective roles. So I was definitely able to recruit them, bring them in. With Tamika, we were able to bring her back home to Georgia. And with Trevor, gave him an opportunity to definitely spread his wings and to be challenged a little bit more. So and with Wendy, he's doing a phenomenal job with value analysis as we revamp that program. And he also oversees our master data management, formerly MMIS, which is normally the term within supply chain. But a team came to me and said, "Hey, if we want to go forward, we too as a department need to go forward." So changed their name to Master Data Management, which was very integral part within our workday, because as we all know, with data, what you put in is what you get out. And they did a phenomenal job with cleaning up our data, ensuring that item master was pristine, and then also working to get the contract system together to transfer all new contracts in. So, all the way around the board, my success is their success, and vice versa. We lead as a team, of leaders, and we roll up the sleeves and get the job done.
Well, that's great, and you've certainly had a lot of success, and appreciate you sharing so much with our audience. Just a lot of respect for what you've done there, and stick-to-itiveness on that side. Maybe in closing, you've gone through 4 years, you've done a lot, you're opening the CSC, you're finalizing the ERP implementation. Maybe just talk about what's next, either for the industry from your viewpoint, or for Grady specifically, as you look out 3 years, 3 to 5 years, into the future.
So I'll say my personal opinion on this one is nothing that's documented or said, but as we're going through, I call it changing of the guards, just between our current CEO, John Harper, and then Anthony Stahl coming in January 27. I do foresee continued growth. I know one thing or a few things will not change is that, patients will always remain first. The presence in the community, we will meet our patients where they're at, and do the best that we can to assist and aid them through, whichever situation they might be facing. But from there, just internally in the health system, I think the overall just development of talent is something that is happening, but will continue to happen. I would say that Grady would, continue to do our best to be best in class. As Anthony, continues to remind us, is that we're shifting from good to great. And that was something that prior to it being system wide, that was one of our goals and initiatives within supply chain, is that shift from good to great. So, ultimately with that, whether it's supply chain or the health system, we'll continue to get better at what we do. I feel that, iron sharpens iron, and continue to strive to be best in class.
No, and I love good to great, and you've made so much progress getting the flywheel moving, that I'm sure you can align, to the evolving vision, and expansion of Grady Health System. And with that, I'd just like to say thank you, on behalf of me and the audience listening to this. Kevin, you're a bright light in the industry. Appreciate that everything that you're doing, for healthcare supply chain and Grady specifically. Thank you for joining the podcast today.
Thank you for having me. Definitely a great conversation.
And with that, thank you everybody for joining. And this is Eric O'Daffer and Kevin Gordon, signing off for Smarter Sourcing Healthcare. Have a great day.